Hello folks, my name is Saye Zonen. I'm an author, a speaker, and an educator. And today on The Undefeated, we're going to be talking about finding greatness, what one has to do to find greatness. It's a pleasure being here. So for those of you watching, it's a pleasure, and we're going to talk about a few things that have inspired me so far in my life. Looking at the book cover here, the book came to life in 2013 with their Finding My Frequency. And Finding My Frequency was birthed out of, I think it was an epiphany, meaning a nudge, some divine inspiration. When we talk about epiphany, a divine inspiration to embrace the second half of life. Yeah, so when that calling came, it's very difficult. Like just like Campbell says, it's a hero's journey. You must go through that pain to come out of it. And it was difficult leaving the comfort zone, what we've created, and the trajectory I was on. It was difficult leaving that. But Finding My Frequency came out of the fact that we took that leap. I took the leap into the unknown, and we're in the process. And it's a fulfilling process. I'm really convinced that greatness is groomed out of grit. Right? And when I talk about grit, I talk about the grind, the necessary process involved for a man to decide on a course and to achieve that goal. Right? At first, when I started, I really thought, of course, there's a divine entity that controls us, where some of us call it God, and whatever you want to call it. I understand that. But when you embrace that calling, right, there is a step involved, and that step is the grit. But that step cannot come out of effort. You first have to embrace the calling and feel excited about what you're called to. Now, when that excitation is there and you feel encouraged, there are two things I tell when I teach that will lead a man into fulfillment. One, he's either annoyed by something or he's excited by that thing. So either annoyance or excitation will lead a man to greatness. Because if you're annoyed by it, you go and solve that problem. Once that problem is solved, right, within that solution, you will find something that inspires you. And you will do that without effort. And once you're excited by it, right, trust me, nothing can stop you from that. And for an example, is my book, Finding My Frequency. I always wrestle with the idea of writing, but I didn't feel authenticated because I didn't see myself as an author, right? So, but once I embraced that and accepted myself without fail, without apprehension, I started the process. And in a space of 6 months, the book was birthed. So yes, so when I talk about greatness being groomed out of grit, I'm talking about the necessary enthusiasm required to embrace a journey, because that's pivotal to any success story, right? That grind, that grit, that hunger. I think who said this best? What's his name? Steve Jobs, right? When he gave that 2007, I'm not sure, Stanford commencement, and he referenced something. He said, stay green, stay hungry, and never get ripe, because when you get ripe, you're approaching decay. So yes, so you must always be green, you stay fresh. And my thing is that greatness is nothing that's foreign. It is not set aside for a particular stock of people. It is not esoteric, meaning it's not up in the distance. It's not for educated people. Greatness is something that is inherent to all of us. All of us. We have greatness within us. The secret is to tap into that greatness. Now, you can't do it by education alone. Education is just another avenue to obtain one's greatness. You can use education, but whatever talent you're given, whether education or whether just care or whatever it is you have in you that's in abundance and that you can give freely, that can be used to propel anyone to any successful life they envision for themselves. So greatness is not esoteric. Greatness is not for a particular stock of people. Greatness is groomed out of grit, and greatness also comes either from one accepting solving the problem, either the annoyance, the thing that annoys you, or the thing that excites you. Now, if you can go and solve those problems, then you achieve what comes to you naturally. I know, the world that we live in now talks about education, going to school and getting degrees. those things will allow you to function within the culture. All right, they're very pivotal to function within the culture, but they are not. Education and everything else are not the only means by which one can rise to greatness. All right, so after talking about greatness is grew out of great, what steps can we take? What are some of the things we have to do to get ourselves there? First and foremost, I think I talk about kenosis as a big word in religion for self-emptying. And I think in my book, Finding My Frequency, I use two big words. I talk about introspection. And this is what we talk about looking within, right? You have to first have an inner talk. Free yourself from everything else around you and ask some critical questions about your life. What it is you want in this life. And in answering those questions, you can get the ball rolling in bringing yourself to the path that takes you towards your greatness. And the answers that will come back to you from those questions are the answers that are internal to you, are the answers to which God is speaking to you, if you believe in God. For some of you, you don't. But whatever answer you get back from the questions you ask yourself, that is God speaking to you. And I call that introspection. So when you look within and you ask a critical question, say, listen, I need to do certain things to get to a certain place, to a particular place. What do I need to do? And the answer may come back, listen, you have to change venue. You have to change location. You have to change some friends. You have to change some places that you go to, some habits. You have to change those things. And sometimes it gets very difficult. And I give you a personal story, right? So it was in December 1992, June or somewhere, right? And our name came up to come to the United States. And I was pretty young, 20, 21 years old. I was drinking at the time. But I knew I was leaving to come to a new place. And I wanted change. So I told myself, I said, listen, I'll have to abstain or stop drinking because I could not control my habit. I could not control myself when I drink or when I drank. So I said, well, the first thing to do is to set aside drinking for as long as I can until I have established myself, I've become mature to control my drinking and I've set myself on a particular course. So for 16 years, I came in this country in 92 December up until 2000 something. I didn't have one drop of alcohol. Right? I would go to clubs. I would hang with friends. Some would drink. Some would do marijuana. But in that space, because I've told myself, I've had my self-talk, and I knew I was on this path to greatness. So I did not allow myself to fall prey to that. So it was an internal talk that kept me from drinking for 16 years until I knew I was mature. So on this path of greatness, one must first define and declare what it is you need to do. And once you define and declare it, let that also define who you are and let that thing you want to be or want to do be the verb that describes you. So you need to ascribe to yourself the verb of what it is you want to be. Say for an example, what I've done is I've taken my own personal name, Saye, S-A-Y-E. And I think I wrote something and said, Mama had no clue when she named me Saye that God has blessed his womb with a man who's going to use speakership as a speaker, an author, a youth foster, and an educator. So I've taken my name to be the acronym that describes who I am. So when I see myself as such. Now here's the thing. You cannot allow validation from outside to say who you are. You must first validate yourself and say, listen, I am who I am. And no external force, no one outside of you will say, well, you are not that. Because once you declare and define it and you know who you are, you've established that person to be you. So the whole greatness thing comes from there. It's introspection, and also another word I use is called self-flagellation, meaning it's a fancy word for beating yourself up, right? For making yourself do the thing. Because you cannot be wishy-washy or apprehensive about it. You have to embrace it with all vigor, with all enthusiasm in you. And pretty much this is the path that I'm on. Because my own personal story tells that, right? Here I was, like the subtitle of the book says, have a pause in my upward mobility and embrace austerity. Now, these are all big words. I understand that. Upward mobility just means, the climb in my social status, the climb in my happiness, my social happiness. I pause in that pursuit and I embrace austerity is a big word for simplicity, for simple life. How I did it and why I did it. So the book captures all that And all those things, when you take into consideration self-flagellation, you take into consideration introspection, you take into consideration grit, and all those things, and if you embrace it as an individual and stand firm on those principles, right? Only time, right? Only time will tell. And here's a secret now. The most important part is that you will realize that there's no effort in that process. Now, that's very critical because people think that you have to go suffer and you got to go through hell. I don't think so. Yeah, the process may be difficult, but the difficulties, you look at it as necessary evil for the greatness you want to achieve. I hope that is made clear. Let me overemphasize that, right? The difficulties you experience in the process of achieving your greatness, those difficulties can be difficulties because they're necessary evil to prepare you to where you're going. Because the life we live is undulating. Big word again for up and down. Such is life. Some days are good, some days are bad, but you have to enjoy the journey. And one thing you can do to make that journey easier or to start the journey is find silence. See, it's very difficult now in this world that we live in. You know, everyone has an opinion, and we're all aware of our potential. But sometimes it's very difficult to hear that inner voice. So the first thing you can do is look for silence, right? I think Rumi, the Sufi mystic Rumi said, silence is the language of God. All else is poor interpretation. So it's crucial that you separate yourself from everything you do and find a silent place and give and listen to your thoughts. Because in those thoughts, in that silence, you'll hear the answer and you know your solution. So the first step is to disenthrall, to separate yourself from everything else. Your parents, your friends, your mom, your wife, if you have a wife, your husband, and go to a quiet place or sit in a quiet place and really hone your thoughts. And sometimes some people would love to write. If you want to write, grab a pen and paper, write some things down if you want to. And in fact, I would recommend that you do that because sometimes when a thought comes, right, if you don't write it down, you will forget them. So it's good to write them down and go back and review them. But first and foremost, you need to find silence, because in the silence, you will know the solution and you will find the answers to your problem. But here comes the problem and the challenge, because after you know your solution, when you re-emerge into the real world, right, into this physicality, then you kind of get a little bit confused about who you are, because everything else around you is telling you what you're not. But you must stand firm to who you are. And my personal story is an example of that. Because I was climbing in this social ladder. Everything was going great. But then when I started practicing that flagellation, that's beating myself up, and when I found the silence, the first thing that I did was, all right, what is this? Is this God speaking to me? Is this predestination or predisposition? Now that's very powerful, right? Those questions will come to you when you decide a course. It's a powerful thing. You ask yourself this question: what am I doing? Am I disposing myself prematurely, or is this a beginning of something fresh? Now, let me say with all affinity that yes, it is the beginning of something fresh. Embrace it with all your might. You find that frequency, because in that frequency, you will vibrate. And our entire world is nothing about vibration. And once you come in connection with who you say you are, and you've done that silence, and you accepted the call, right? Then the hero journey begins. Now the work of going out there and finding yourself and creating yourself and becoming who you say you are, the journey starts. And please, one simple thing: this time cannot be a factor. Graduation is never part of the process. Validation from outside is not part of the equation. You are left with you and you. Everything you do now is about you and you. Now you have to listen to yourself and follow your own calling, because you will find yourself in disagreement with what society says. But all men who've become great didn't listen to external forces. They listened to the force and the voice coming from within them. And that force is the force that is going to prepare you to greatness. Thanks for watching the video. What excites you and what annoys you? What are the challenges that will give you great on the journey to finding greatness? Whatever that is, you need to look deep within you and find that. And I hope this video has helped, and I hope you can do some introspection and find what leads you to your greatness. Please like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you.